This is CBC Vancouver News.
The threat of the flood, at least on this event, has passed.
Optimism, the worst of the flooding is over in Grand Forks, but the reprieve temporary in what locals see as an annual emergency.
Now that the water is going down, we start looking at where the damage has been done.
The waters are receding in Cache Creek too, but the damage is in the millions and key infrastructure is still under threat.
I think it's awesome that she's helping people around her and sharing what she's gone through.
And using the runway as a megaphone. Meet the teen honored with an award for shedding light on her own anxiety and helping other young people do the same. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We begin in the southern interior where the worst of the flooding appears to be over for now. Local rivers in and around Grand Forks have crested, meaning the flood danger is now receding. Many evacuation orders are being dialed back to alerts, allowing residents to return home. But longtime locals say this isn't the first time they've been through this, and it certainly won't be the last. The CBC's Tom Popick has our top story tonight.
With a swollen river just a stone's throw away, Dale Watt has endured some sleepless nights.
I didn't think we were going to get it this bad, but then I had a bad feeling. So I moved all my stuff out of the yard, all my other vehicles and my trailer and other stuff, and so didn't get caught with my pants down.
He spent days pumping rising groundwater from his property. He says he's had to scream to get a tiger dam deployed to protect his home and this main riverside road. But now, some signs of relief.
The good news story is here, I think the threat of the flood, at least on this event, has passed.
Some residential streets in Grand Forks have been closed. Low-lying riverside parkland was flooded, and some 36 properties were evacuated as precaution. But the converging Granby and Kettle rivers have crested. Warm rain melting alpine snowpack that sparked a heavy freshet through the region is subsiding. While sandbagging continues, emergency officials have downgraded most mandatory evacuation orders to flooding alerts. Some 24 properties, including Manly Meadows and South Johnson Flats, remain off limits.
We can't say that there's no risk left. There is still snow in the mountaintops, so it does make us vulnerable for future rain events and heat events. So we're monitoring that still very closely.
There are no reports of serious property damage. The city's mayor credits preparation.
I'm pleased to see that the water is staying in the river and not in the downtown of Grand Forks. So.
This city is no stranger to repeated flooding. The most recent in 2018 destroyed almost 100 homes on the floodplain. Rather than rebuild, the North Buckle neighborhood was abandoned. The city has been buying out properties, relocating residents and homes that could be salvaged. Over $40 million has been spent on the effort, including new levees, pumps, and a Riverside Street cofferdam that held back water this week.
I figure they're trying to do the best they can.
Dale Watt's home is outside that neighborhood and still at risk. Now cleaning up and watching the unprotected riverbank.
Until the river goes down and it takes the water table down with it, then we're on easy street.
He says sleep will have to wait. Tom Popick, CBC News, Grand Forks.
Let's continue our coverage a little further north. Now in Cache Creek, people are getting a look at what the floodwaters left behind. The good news, the water is going down there as well. The bad news, the damage is pegged to be in the millions already. As our Jennifer Norwell shows us, the immediate priority is repairing key bridges and infrastructure above the community.
Crews continue to work upstream from Cache Creek. For the last week, the village has been under a state of emergency because of high waters caused by a combination of snowmelt and rains. Water levels are dropping in the village, highways have reopened, and the elementary school is set to have students return tomorrow. But the focus remains on bridges and infrastructure above the community.
So as you can see behind me, crews are working on trying to stabilize a power pole. This washed away partially the road earlier, the creek over here, where you can see that there is significant erosion that's still happening.
Stephen Case lives along Back Valley Road. He's been watching the creek as it continues to wash away parts of the road near his home.
The debris, the trees that are coming down, the sediment that is allowing the water to come up even higher, and the trees start to point in a certain direction, and it directs the flow of the water. Wherever those trees point, that's where it starts to chew away towards the road.
Case says his home could have been lost if not for the work of contractors.
The other day we had flooding that was up into this transfer station for Fortis BC, and it was so deep in there that the pipeline technician was almost scuba diving.
He believes the focus to protect this road is key, not only because of energy infrastructure, but because it will be a critical route for planters later in the year, so trees can be put in the ground to stabilize the mountains above the creek. Meanwhile, in Cache Creek, the village is taking stock of the flooding.
The water has stopped flowing through the fire hall, which is good news. So now that the water is going down, we start looking at where the damage has been done. And we're hoping that damage assessment will start early next week and we can start to work on repairs.
While no firm number has been established, the damage is expected to be in the millions, and all this dependent on the rain and the coming week to not bring further flooding. Jennifer Norwell, CBC News, Cache Creek.
Well, there is also some positive news on the wildfire front tonight. Rain has helped with the firefighting efforts up in the Peace region.
The local weather stations there reported nearly 20 millimeters of precipitation in the past 24 hours, which has helped suppression efforts significantly.
The Tear Creek fire is no longer out of control. All of the evacuation orders in McBride have been rescinded. The other two fires, Boundary Lake and Red Creek, are still a concern at this point. It is very dry and weather conditions are still unstable. And the fire risk remains high in Alberta tonight. More than 100 forest fires are burning in our province next door right now. 31 of them are out of control. The CBC's Julia Wong has more from some of the 29,000 evacuees who've had to leave everything behind.
The brute force of Mother Nature on full display, destroying houses, sheds, and anything else in its way. The ground still smoldering in some places as wildfires rip through Alberta.
We do want to give everybody hope that we're going to be moving this in a direction where we can get people back into their homes as quickly as possible. But fundamentally, we do have to wait for the wildfires to get under control.
That should be enough wool to make an Afghan, eh?
Like Barbara Jantz, who left Fox Creek about 250 kilometers northwest of Edmonton, even though she didn't want to. Neighbors convinced her to leave. They're all staying at a campground, and the situation has made Jantz emotional.
Everything. You're making me cry. I want rain bad.
Dorothy Dennis and her husband fled Fox Creek Friday before the mandatory evacuation order came down, after they saw a red glow from their deck.
You don't know if you're going to go back home to your home. Fort McMurray came into my mind, what they went through in 2016. It's very scary. It's so surreal.
The anxiety and stress of the situation is obvious.
Every time the alert comes on, we're on the alert. You want to look, and yet you're scared to look because they might say it's your town that's actually on fire.
The fires are happening in the middle of a provincial election. Both Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and NDP leader Rachel Notley visited the Edmonton Evacuation Centre Sunday.
Regardless of what's going on with the election, is going to have your back, and we're going to do everything we can to support you and others in your communities.
The Premier's office says she will be speaking with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Monday and will be asking for federal assistance.
We know that potentially there's some military supports that they can offer. We're going to see if they have any firefighting expertise. We'll see if they have any engineering support.
Temperatures have been a bit cooler the last few days, and we saw rain in some parts of the province. Wildfire officials say that helped a bit. Now, we can expect this type of weather for a couple of days, but there are concerns. Temperatures are expected to rise later this week, and because these fires have burned so hot and so deep, hot spots could reignite. Julia Wong, CBC News, Shining Bank, Alberta.
As we've seen, it's been an intense start to the fire season on the other side of the Rockies. So far this year, there have been more than 400 wildfires consuming 375,000 hectares. Our Lindsay Duncombe now looks at what makes this year different.
It's not the timing of this Alberta fire emergency that's so unusual, but its scope. And for Western Canada, that could signal danger to come.
Every 3 to 5 years, we seem to have a very active fire season in May in Alberta.
Slave Lake in 2011, Fort McMurray 5 years later, Chuckegg Creek 2019. All burned in May, that window of danger when the snow is gone, but there's no grass on the ground or leaves on the trees yet. Two factors that can help hold moisture and slow fires from spreading. This year, though, those intense May fires are popping up in many places all at once. Since January, more than 375,000 hectares have burned in Alberta. The average number, around 800.
We've seen it again, but of a different flavor. People have called this season certainly unprecedented in recent memory when we have so many fires so spread out.
Meteorologists say what that means for the rest of the fire season is unclear. It's tough to forecast rain and wind more than a week out, but thanks to climate change, risks are adding up.
It's a big if, but it could be setting up. The dice are weighted towards an active fire season now for the West.
Scientists say lightning is more frequent, fire seasons are longer, and in many places the ground is drier. That's especially true in some areas of BC, where wildfires are typically expected later in the summer.
Drought Code 5, it does imply that adverse events are almost expected.
Fires are already burning in BC with a handful of communities at risk. These images show a flaming hillside under northern lights. Beauty and danger captured in the same frame in this uncertain spring. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And as these situations are so weather dependent, let's take a look at the forecast, starting with the current conditions across Western Canada. You can see all that unstable air that's been pushing up from the south. That's giving us those pockets of precipitation. Good news for the wildfire situation, especially up further north with Prince George. You can see the rain showers have really helped, as we heard with those fires. But the problem with that double-edged sword is that could bring a chance of lightning as well. We'll have to watch that over the next few days. The wind, a critical factor too in that situation. Moving down further south, as you can see through the southern interior and pushing east into the Kootenays as well. We still have some rain in the forecast, but not as much as we've seen. Hopefully the bulk of that snowpack has now melted, so any of those rain showers won't mean major flooding yet again. Here's tomorrow's forecast. As you can see in the interior, the Okanagan, a chance of lightning still. We'll have to watch the wind too, as we mentioned. And here's the five-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. Nice if you're hoping for some warmer weather. We're about seasonal, a little bit warmer than normal, but still some nice conditions as we head in through the work week. Well, some terrifying moments today when a crash sent a vehicle careening into the Nickelmeckle River in South Surrey. A black SUV was heading south on 152nd Street around 36th Avenue when RCMP say the driver lost control due to some sort of medical issue. It crashed into another vehicle before plunging into the water. The passenger managed to escape, and with the help of an officer, they rescued the driver and began first aid. He was conscious and breathing when he was taken to the hospital. In other news, there is potential job action on the horizon for WestJet pilots. They are set to hold an informational picket tomorrow morning at YVR.
It'll be a peaceful demonstration. It'll be a professional display of our pilots, again, on their day off, marching in solidarity, shoulder to shoulder with their fellow pilots, again, to show unity to management, to hopefully get management to come to the table with a fair deal for us.
He says pay and job security are sticking points, but both sides are still at the negotiating table. In an earlier statement, WestJet says it's committed to achieving a competitive agreement and will keep passengers updated as required. WestJet pilots will be in strike position as of midnight, May 16th, just before the Victoria Day long weekend. A 14-year-old from Richmond is being honored for her work as a mental health advocate and mentor. She received an honorary award at a ceremony last night. Our Janella Hamilton caught up with her today to find out just how she's using her own journey to come alongside others with similar struggles.
Since Amaya Cruz was 8 years old, she's been experiencing panic attacks.
I cry a lot. I feel like I'm short of breath, I can't breathe.
Over the years, her anxiety got to a point where she struggled to get out of bed without any energy to shower or even brush her teeth.
My anxiety kind of just like tells me that like no one likes me and like I'm not important to other people.
Her mom says it was terrifying to see her once outgoing daughter holed up in her room, isolated and disconnected from friends.
It's the worst feeling in the world. It's the worst feeling in the world because you want them to be happy.
And when the pandemic hit, Amaya developed what she and her mental health team now know was severe clinical depression.
So that's why it was just super important for me to keep her in sports, keep her active.
Amaya says softball has been an important outlet for her anxiety.
It helps me in many ways. I love my coach's support and my teammates as well. I make really good relationships and I trust a lot of people on my team here.
Her teammate Sienna Lempriere, who once battled her own mental health challenges, calls Amaya both inspirational and brave.
I'm very proud of her because I know what she's gone through, and I think it's awesome that she's helping people around her and sharing like what she's gone through.
In 2019, Amaya began seeking counseling at BC Children's Hospital. A year later, she took her message of strength and resiliency to the runway. Around the same time, she started peer mentoring other teens facing similar struggles at a Richmond nonprofit. And in February, she achieved her childhood dream, walking in New York Fashion Week.
I think Amaya gives, a face and a personal story behind what can happen when you do speak up. And that's where I think that Amaya's journey shows that with patience, with hard work that she does on herself, and with trusting your team around you, things will get better over time.
By speaking out, Amaya wants to break the stigma around asking for help.
I still have my struggles and panic attacks do occur, but I'm doing better and I'm doing better where I was like a couple years ago, and that's what I'm proud of.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
An Nanaimo man has helped spark a global art movement involving 100 world-class photographers, all raising money for ocean conservation.
And these photographers have all donated their works for 100% of the proceeds going to ocean conservation. So of course the reception is absolutely fantastic. It's heartwarming, it's exciting.
The artwork starts at $100 a piece, with net proceeds going to upstart NGOs. Half a dozen artists from Vancouver Island are featured in the project, alongside former White House and National Geographic photographers. And a volunteer-led project in Vancouver is providing immigrant and refugee families with free eye exams and glasses. Take a listen.
Today we're at the Specsavers at East Hastings Street. We are serving roughly 50 patients who frequent the Pacific Immigration Resources Society. These 50 patients are mostly women and children and refugees. They speak a variety of languages. They come from all parts of the world. We're providing free eye exams and free eyeglasses as well. I've met a lot of the patients over the years. Some people say that they've needed something like this for a decade. They just didn't know where to go, where to start. What we've done here is really reach out to them, so that way they don't have to ask the questions. And as you imagine, sometimes there's a sense of shame for asking for help. So the fact that we reached out, we sort of closed the gap to make it easier for them to get access to these services. To all the opticians out there, optometrists out there, if you'd like to be involved, look up the eyeglassesproject.org and reach out. Thank you.
Well, still ahead, capturing migratory songbirds and tracking them for research. After the break, we join along with a group of volunteers as they band migratory birds. Stay with us. Welcome back. A group of volunteers has been spending a lot of time at Iona Regional Park in Richmond these days. They're there to capture migratory songbirds and track them for research. But as our Marie Seidler is finding out, their work is up in the air.
A bird stuck in a net is normally a cause for alarm, but today it's a small celebration for science.
Looks like we've got a female yellow-rumped warbler here. What we do is we very carefully grab the bird.
This songbird is one of dozens of species that fly through Iona Regional Park in Richmond at this time of year. They're passing through on the Pacific Flyway, making their way north.
So there's our female myrtle warbler.
It may look harrowing, but rest assured, no birds were harmed in the making of this news story.
The idea is that the slight inconvenience that we put these individuals through is worth the broader information that we can glean about the population.
Every year at this time, a group of staff and volunteers gather at Iona to capture and release migratory songbirds. The birds are measured, weighed, and examined, with all those details plugged into a database. They're then fitted with a nifty little ankle bracelet that lets other researchers track them over time.
And they represent sort of the status, the health of an ecosystem. If the birds are doing well, there's a pretty good chance that your ecosystem's functioning.
Wild Research has been gathering birds like this one for more than 12 years here at Iona Regional Park. But there are changes afoot, changes that could affect how the group does its research. Iona Regional Park is also home to Metro Vancouver's second largest wastewater treatment plant, an aging facility that has reached the end of its lifespan. The region has $10 billion in changes planned for the facility and the park.
We're, I think, just dealing with a little bit of uncertainty right now about how this very large long-term project's going to be impacting not only our operation, but just, the wild bird stopover site in general.
But Metro Vancouver says the changes are no cause for alarm and are likely to help, not hinder migratory birds.
Really, we're looking at the broader ecological connectivity of the island and trying to restore natural processes and trying to create bird habitat that is really sustainable over the long term, that's functioning in its natural state and is supporting even greater bird communities. So that research is important.
Metro Vancouver says the changes will create new bird habitat for years to come, habitat that will help birds like this one make their way home. Marie Seidler, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, coming up, thousands of marathon runners flooded downtown Vancouver for today's marathon, but one of them was wearing 81 T-shirts. We'll introduce you to him and explain why he was doing so. That's coming up next. Stay with us. Well, some 5,000 runners swarmed the streets of Vancouver today for the BMO Marathon.
Vancouver, he's got to be our champion with a 2:17.05 clocking.
That is the winner, running the full 42 kilometers in 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 5 seconds. And this year, one runner took aim at a Guinness World Record by running with 81 shirts on.
I think we can go for a few more. There's a little bit extra that we could put on, so I can see me coming back to do it again. Yeah. Maybe not next week.
Also in the running for Best Michelin Man, the world record for most number of T-shirts worn during a marathon was set last year in the UK with 54 shirts. He says his shirt sizes range from small to triple extra large. That is your late news for this Sunday. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.